Greg Cosell is a name that carries significant weight in football circles. He is someone I hold in the highest regard. A true master of film study, a mind that cuts through the noise and gets to the substance of the game. So when he speaks, I listen. Recently, he appeared on the Ross Tucker podcast and shared some thoughts on Fernando Mendoza that caught my attention. Cosell essentially said that Mendoza is not a playmaker, and that he didn't consistently make the kinds of throws you want to see from a quarterback prospect. Now, for Las Vegas Raiders fans who have been linked to Mendoza, that kind of critique might raise an eyebrow. It's fascinating to watch the discourse around this player evolve, especially when someone of Cosell's stature adds his voice to the conversation. To be fair, Greg elaborated further. He clarified that it's not necessarily that Mendoza can't make those plays or execute those specific throws. It's simply that, based on the film available, he didn't. His assessment suggests that Mendoza operates in a more old-school structured system. And this is where I think a lot of people, and I'm not accusing Greg of this, but fans and analysts in general, fail to appreciate a crucial nuance. There's a prevailing assumption in football analysis that if a quarterback isn't doing something on film, it must be because he's incapable of doing it. If he's not pushing the ball downfield, it's because he lacks arm talent. If he's not making tight window throws, it's because he doesn't have the confidence or the vision. We immediately jump to the conclusion that the absence of a trait is evidence of a liability. But sometimes, just sometimes, a quarterback falls into what works. You get into a rhythm, you find a formula that leads to success, and there is absolutely no reason to deviate from it. If Mendoza wasn't making those highlight reel throws, if he wasn't doing the things that film grinders like Cosell want to see, but his team was winning and his offense was humming, then why would he force the issue? Now, if his team was struggling, if this was happening over multiple seasons with continuity in coaching and roster, and you couldn't explain it away by pointing to a lack of weapons or a weak offensive line, then I could understand the skepticism. Then the logic starts to fray, and you begin to question whether the quarterback is the limiting factor. But that's not the scenario we're talking about here. The reality is that when you're winning, when you have momentum, when the offense is in sync and executing efficiently, there is zero incentive to break that rhythm. Zero. Why would you voluntarily abandon what's working? Why would a quarterback feel the need to prove he can make every throw on the route tree if the simplified version of the offense is moving the chains and putting points on the board? The fact that Mendoza isn't constantly going out of his way to manufacture splash plays, the kind that jump off the screen and generate buzz, is something I actually find admirable. It demonstrates a level of discipline that is rare in young quarterbacks. It shows that he can play within structure. It shows that he trusts the system. When things are going well, he's content to follow the script. And by script, I don't just mean the first 15 scripted plays of the game. I mean the broader philosophical script, the identity of the offense, the game plan, the read progression. He's not freelancing. He's not forcing the ball into windows that don't exist. He's executing the offense as designed. And in football, that is an incredibly valuable trait. Think about the quarterbacks who struggle to follow the script. Baker Mayfield, early in his career, had a tendency to play hero ball. Kyler Murray has had moments where he abandons structure and tries to create something out of nothing. Lamar Jackson, for all his brilliance, has occasionally been criticized for not staying within the rhythm of the passing game. Sam Darnold, earlier in his career, was notorious for seeing ghosts and making panicked decisions. Even Tanner McKee, and I'm using him as an example not because he's an established name, but because it was so evident in a specific game. When I watched him against the Washington Commanders, it stood out to me how often he went off script. He was trying to make harder throws than necessary. He was trying to be a playmaker in moments that called for a simple check down or a throwaway. And it failed him. It backfired spectacularly. Sometimes the smartest thing a quarterback can do is just stick to the script. We see this dynamic play out in football all the time. How many times have you been watching a game and heard a commentator say, "If I'm Sean McVay, I'm not calling another pass until they prove they can stop the run"? Obviously, you can't be that rigid in a real game, but the sentiment is correct. Keep doing what's working. Follow the script. Don't outsmart yourself. The most recent and perfect example of this principle is the Philadelphia Eagles. All season long, people kept saying, "The Eagles aren't doing this. The Eagles aren't doing that." They weren't throwing the ball downfield as much as people expected. They weren't showcasing Jalen Hurts as a passer. And the reason was simple. They didn't need to. They were winning. They were running the ball effectively. Their defense was dominant. Why force something that isn't necessary? And then, when the moment came, whether it was against the Commanders in the NFC Championship or in the Super Bowl, or even against the Packers earlier in the playoffs, they showed they could do it. When they needed to go off script, when they needed Jalen Hurts to make those plays, he delivered. The capability was always there. It just wasn't required until it was. That's the thing about these sound bites, these quotes from analysts. They sound good in theory. They sound like revelations. He didn't make the throws you want to see. It has the ring of truth, like a diamond in the rough that only a trained eye can spot. And you start to wonder, am I missing something? Have I been staring at the wrong tape? But not everything is what it seems on the surface. We are so obsessed as a football community with finding the hidden flaw, the overlooked weakness. There's a certain appeal to being the person who sees what everyone else misses, the scientist in a disaster movie who shouts, "An asteroid is coming," while everyone else dismisses him. The data doesn't lie. The film doesn't lie. It's intoxicating. And to be absolutely clear, I am not suggesting Greg Cosell is doing that. Greg is not in the business of chasing clicks or manufacturing controversy. That's why I respect him so much. His approach is pure. I'm here to analyze the film. I'm here to tell you what I see. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. He presents the data, the visual evidence, and then steps back. He doesn't impose value judgments. He doesn't rank players. He doesn't say, this guy is a bust, or this guy is a star. He simply translates the film, and that is a superpower. If I were ever to become a film analyst, that's exactly how I would want to operate. Neutral, descriptive, not prescriptive. If we want to look at this through a scientific lens, Greg is the researcher. He runs the numbers, he catalogs the data, he observes the phenomena. Then it's up to others, the front offices, the coaches, the fans, the content creators, to interpret what that data means. You have to factor in context. Scheme, supporting cast, game situation, opponent. Someone who just looks at the raw film without context might conclude, Mendoza doesn't make tight window throws. But the interpreter might say, he didn't need to make tight window throws because his receivers were consistently open within the structure of the offense. That's a different conclusion entirely. Greg is careful about this. He's meticulous. He neutralizes his analysis. And that's why I value his perspective so much. He's not trying to tell you what to think. He's giving you the raw material. He's translating X's and O's into plain English. You can disagree with him, and that's fine. But his approach is grounded in a kind of intellectual honesty that is rare in sports media. Now, where I think I can add value is by providing context to statements like these. Because when you don't have someone who can see through the noise, you end up with fans and analysts parroting sound bites without understanding the full picture. Yeah, he's not a playmaker. Yeah, he's not making the throws you want to see. Yeah, he's old school. It's 2026. We need a new school quarterback. And it's like, hold on, not so fast. Slow down. Context matters. I didn't realize Fernando Mendoza was going to be such a polarizing figure. I didn't expect him to be this divisive. But I love it when that happens. Honestly, it makes the draft process more interesting. We saw it with Caleb Williams. Way more debate than we saw with Jaden Daniels. We saw it with Bo Nix. I love it when people have strong opinions because it forces us to dig deeper. That said, I will make one observation based on my own experience. Bo Nix is probably the most recent and relevant example. Coming out of college, Bo Nix was incredibly controversial. Half the people said, he's not that good. Look at his freshman tape. He's a system quarterback. The other half said, Bo Nix is legit. He's awesome. He's going to surprise everyone. And those two factions were loud. It was a 50-50 split, and both sides were passionate. You could feel the tension in every discussion. I don't see that with Fernando Mendoza. Not yet. I see Raiders fans who are happy and excited about the possibility of drafting him. But there isn't that army of belief behind him. There isn't that massive college fan base flooding the comments with profile pictures and usernames, defending their guy. A lot of the Bo Nix buzz came from Oregon fans and Auburn fans who had watched him for years. They brought that college energy into the NFL discourse. They were loud, they were proud, and they were everywhere. I always talk about how certain quarterbacks develop their own individual fan bases. Baker Mayfield has one, Lamar Jackson has one. It's fascinating to see when that personal fan base becomes louder than the team's fan base. I haven't seen that with Mendoza. Maybe it will change after the draft. Maybe once he's officially a Raider, the energy will shift. But right now, it's not there. That doesn't mean he's not a great quarterback, it's just an observation. I find it interesting when a quarterback captivates the masses. I find it interesting when there's genuine, unsettled debate. With Mendoza, there's some of that, controversy might be too strong a word, but there's definitely uncertainty. And I see more of these skeptical takes than I see passionate defenses. I don't see enough people pushing back and saying, "What are you talking about? This guy is going to be awesome." The believers aren't as loud as the Bo Nix fans were. They aren't as loud as the Baker fans. They aren't as loud as the Caleb fans. It's just something I've noticed. So, I don't know. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means everything. But it's interesting to observe. Those are just my thoughts, and I genuinely love to hear yours. What do you think about Fernando Mendoza? Do you buy the critique that he's not a playmaker? Do you think he didn't make the throws you want to see? Or do you see a quarterback who played within structure and executed efficiently? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Whether you agree with me or disagree, let's get some discussions going. Let's have some debates. But ultimately, let's just have fun with it. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love having you as part of it. I want to create something we all feel connected to, something we're genuinely excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.